Australia and New Zealand, a 25-year veteran at McKinsey's, and also heads the organisational behavioural practice there. And I admire anyone who's in the role of managing partner of a professional services firm, having had a minor stint myself some years ago, and the herding cats doesn't even come close. But insofar as Steve left us with the notion that it's all about the people, I think that plays nicely to Michael's natural skill in that organisational behavioural context. And for the many organisations here that have been the beneficiaries of some of the insights that the McKinsey's work brings, I think we'll look forward to Michael, who is sponsored by the Victorian Government today, speaking with us on necessity is the mother of invention. Thank you, Michael.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Kathy. Let me begin with a personal story. About 20 years ago, I woke up one morning with a big lump in my gut. And it turned out that it was a tumour, and it weighed about 7 pounds, and it was cancerous. And so I went to the doctor, and basically they found 20 others around my body, and I had a year to live. And at that time, I was a young Turk in McKinsey, sort of, on the white horse, going forward. I just got married, I was just becoming a partner, and I had a year to live. So I went through heavy chemotherapy, and I also came down to Melbourne to visit someone called Ian Gawler, that some of you may know. And Ian does work with cancer patients on things like meditation, the mind-body aspects of disease, diet, and suffice to say that my time with Ian, which was 10 days, was life-changing. And it was the first time in my life I'd done any personal development work, and I essentially went on an internal journey into my own understanding and into understanding what drives disease between the mind and the body. I then went back to my chemotherapy. And one of the things that Ian said was, you can actually increase your white cells. Your white cells are the things that kill the cancer. And of course, when you have chemo, it kills the white cells, which are sort of counterproductive. So for about 2 months there, I spent 4 hours a day meditating, doing visualization, imagining my white cells. And I did this thing where I imagined every cell in my body and the white cells getting created and getting the cancer and eating them all up like little Pac-Men. And then when I went to have my chemotherapy the next time, my white cell count went from 1.5 or 2 out of 10. Normal's about 3 to 5. In cancer patients who've had chemo, it's lower. And it was 7.8. And of course, the doctor was like, well, there must be something wrong with the test. Let's have it again. So they went and had the test again. He said, I don't know what's wrong with the test, but we can give you lots of chemo. So anyway, within 6 weeks, I hear laughter there, and it was so true. They just couldn't get their head around what was happening. This was, of course, 20 years ago. A lot of this has changed now. But what happened within 8 weeks, my cancer was completely healed. I had a gallium scan. I had 20 tumours. They couldn't find anything. It was what they call a spontaneous remission or a miracle, depending on where you come from. But it was a profound experience, as you can imagine. So I went back to work at McKinsey. Back to the crack troops of Western capitalism, the hard-nosed, analytical types. You know them, you know the sort of people I mean. And well, why did I go back? My wife said to me, I'm uninsured if I leave McKinsey. I'm insured there. She said, you better have a bloody good reason to leave, basically, because I just got married. So I went back to McKinsey. And for a number of years, I had this dual life. I had the life of meditation and personal development and working with other cancer patients and really trying to understand this whole journey that I'd been on and make sense of it, right? It worked in practice, but did it work in theory? What was going on? And the second world, which was my sort of life in McKinsey, and I was doing a lot of organisation change work. And a couple of years in, I had this big thought that actually the challenges of organisation change were the same challenges of mind-body medicine. And it goes like this, just one example. If you want to help someone heal themselves, the first thing is they have to believe that they can heal themselves. Right? So when you get cancer, the cancer happens to you. It was like me. Why has this cancer happened to me? This cancerous thing has happened to me. But what Ian Gawler does, he tells you this little story. He says, do you know that there are hundreds of cancerous cells being produced in your body every day? So right now, you all have cancerous cells in your body. Right? But the question is, why is it for 1/3 of us, because 1/3 of the people in this room will have cancer in your lifetime, does your immune system not see one of those? So meanwhile, one of those is getting out of control while it's still getting rid of all the other hundreds every day. So the question is not, has the cancer happened to you? Because cancer is always happening to you. But why is your immune system not stopping that particular cancer? So you can see what's happened here. You've moved from it's happening to me to what is it about my immune system. Now in psychology, that's called moving from external locus of control to internal locus of control. You cannot heal yourself of cancer if you do not have internal locus of control. If you do not believe that you have created it and therefore you can uncreate it, you can't actually get going the healing process, right? First step, organizational change in a big organization. In the middle of a big organization like a bank, there are thousands of people. When you say to them, let's change this, they go, no, we can't do that. We've tried that before. They won't let us do that, blah, blah, blah. You know, I've got no power. What are they doing? External locus of control, giving their power away. The first thing you have to do in any form of organizational change is actually create internal locus of control. Just one example. There are many of these. So I had this idea, which was actually these two worlds are the same. And then the second big idea was that organizations don't change, people do. And the role of an organizational leader, as Steve so beautifully put it, is to create the environment where people can have the behaviours and be authentically who they can be to create the organisation you want to change. But the leader creates that environment, but people have to actually do the changing, right? People have to. So organisations don't change, people do. So armed with those two ideas, I then started to say, I'm going to try and pull these together, and we started to create a way of working in organisational change that brought a lot of the traditional work, which was structure, process, systems, incentives, all the external things that you normally get to try and change people's behaviour, together with the internal things, the internal aspects of behaviour change, moving from external to internal locus of control, really understanding myself and self-awareness. One of the big issues in organisational change is that people say, oh yeah, I see that, but I'm not part of the problem. How much time do you spend at work dealing with other people's ego? Territory, getting them to think it's their idea, right? I've asked this question of thousands of executives, and actually we've done a bit of research. The number's 20 to 30%, right? Of your time is spent just managing the whole dynamics, right? Ego. How much time do people spend dealing with your ego? Zip. Zero. Because no, it's not a problem. So self-awareness, and you know, the first thing that David had on his little chart was awareness, right? The awareness is so key. So these realizations essentially, you know, led me on this journey of pulling this together and creating a whole new practice within McKinsey globally. The very first document we put into the McKinsey system was called Hearts and Minds, and I can tell you it was the first time the word heart had ever appeared in a McKinsey document in the 60 years of the firm. And this was about 12 years ago. It's come a long way since then. But it's a journey we're still on globally. I then went to New York. I spent years there. I worked in 30 countries, created a global practice. Essentially, what I would call behind the scenes bringing love to business. You can't use that word, you know, one company at a time. But actually it's about, because we can use the word fear in business, but we don't use the word love, right? In business we talk about communication, relationship, connection, all those things. But they're actually words on that side of the ledger. So it's really creating environments in business that are high-performing and also, as Steve said very beautifully, very relational and develop and grow people. And they are, in fact, the most creative and innovative environments for some of the reasons that David pointed out, which is that anxiety kills innovation and creativity. It kills it, right? And in most organisations, most people are living with a degree of anxiety which is unnecessary for performance, right? So I just want to leave you with two thoughts. Adult learning says that you go to a conference like this and you'll hear a lot of insight junkies, but actually adult learning says you can only really take away 1 to 2 of them to embed in your life. So I just want to give you my two, and you can pick one of those or not, but here's the two. Innovation and creativity, right? There are two parts to innovation. The idea, the creative idea, but it also has to be useful and applied. Now, my big idea and the thing I've learned most in my 20 years doing this work on the creative part of it is actually the thing that David talked about, which is that we are all creative. When he asked you, where do you have your most creative thoughts? And you said in the shower, da-da-da, da-da-da. What do all those things have in common? None of you said work. I've done this with thousands of executives, asked this same question. None of them say work, right? Which is a problem because you want to be more innovative and creative at work. The reason is because of what David was describing. You need this reflection phase. And what I've learned about the reflection phase is you can do that anywhere, anytime. At the moment, these moments of creativity, these aha moments are ad hoc. They happen just as you wake up in the morning. They happen when you're in the shower, right? The real question is, can you choose them? And the answer is yes. So I just want to leave you with one little thought. You can choose them. Right? Would you like me to show you a little technique now for choosing them? Okay. It takes 2 minutes. Right? It's something a bit unusual to do in the middle of a speech, but we'll do it. What I'd like you to do is just to sit quietly. Just sit quietly, because I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Get comfortable, and just, when you're ready, just close your eyes. Just close your eyes and place your awareness gently on the rise and fall of your breath. So just feel your breath very gently rising and falling. Now just open your eyes a tiny bit, looking down towards your lap. Just a tiny bit. Just open your eyes a tiny bit, looking down towards your lap. And close them again. Feel yourself drop down. Just place your awareness again, gently, on the rise and fall of your breath. And if you feel yourself having a thought about something, just gently bring yourself back to your breath. Okay, when you're ready, just gently open your eyes again and bring yourself back to the room. I imagine most of you didn't want to stop. Is that right? So what we did there was, that was a minute and a half, that little practice that we did. And what we did was, by closing your eyes, you actually reduce stimulation. 70% of the stimulation that comes in the brain is through your eyes. And then the little practice of placing awareness on your breath makes you internally focused, which was David's second point. And the rhythm of the breath, the rhythmic one-pointed focus of the breath actually creates alpha brainwaves in the brain, which actually slows down your whole metabolism and sort of relaxes you and takes out anxiety. And then the little practice where I asked you just to open your eyes a tiny bit and then close them again. I imagine most of you are like, I don't want to open my eyes. And then when you close them again, did you feel yourself sort of drop? What actually happens, that little practice actually just lifts you up a little bit, but then it sort of drops you down more quickly. It's just a little technique. It's a bit like when you're trying to remember something and you go like this with your eyes, you sort of look up or you look down. It actually creates alpha theta brainwaves. Because what's happening when you go into that more creative space where you have the aha moments is you're actually in a deeper brainwave state. So in about a minute or two, you can actually choose that state. Now, since my work with Ian Gawler 20 years ago, I've been meditating every day. Every single day I meditate. And the reason I do it is because it's made an incredible difference to my life. I'm a very practical person. I do it because it actually keeps my health strong. Because actually, 20, 30 minutes of meditation is like 7 hours of sleep in terms of some of the rejuvenation effects of the body. You still need sleep for other reasons. And the second reason is this, that it's incredibly creative. Every morning before I go to work, I spend 20 minutes and I go into that state. I do a version of that, get into that low alpha theta state where the aha moments come. I sit with it, I get very quiet, and then I imagine my whole day. I imagine everything. I imagine the results, how it's going to feel of different meetings. And I've learned over the years that if I do that, it happens that way. That things happen twice in the universe, once in our imagination, and second out there. And I can tell you that I owe my teams. I've learned that if I don't do it, I have to deal with all the stuff. If I actually can Just be with it, and then you've got to, as David said, you can't do it with anxiety. You've got to sort of let it go. You just got to go with it, sit with it, and just let it go. And actually, what I find is it helps flow. I think that's the best way I can put it. It helps flow. So that little technique where you can choose, if you practice that every day, it's a bit like when you sort of do exercise. You get to the point where, could you feel how it's different in your body? How it's different in your body in that state? That is actually the creative state. That's the same state you have when you wake up in the morning or when you're under the shower, right? By doing it a lot, I can now sit in a meeting and actually think, well, I've got to have a creative thought about this, and just drop my brainwaves. Just 2 seconds, 10 seconds, go into it, bang, sit with it. Close out a lot of the stimulation, just have the courage but just to sit with it, feel it, and then just let it come. Listen to the small voice, as David said. So, my first big thought to you is to really encourage you that we are all incredibly creative. If I ask you how many of you are creative, most of you might say yes because you've come to Creativity Conference, but when I do this with most executives, like 5% of them say I'm creative. Actually, everybody's creative, right? It's about being able to be aware of what allows you to be creative. So my first big thought is that this alpha theta, this idea of sort of dropping yourself into that state at will, is, in my experience, having worked with senior executives all over the world, and we've taught something like 200,000 senior executives globally these little practices, and 80% of them, and we do all, McKinsey, we do analysis coming out about yin yang, all report that it's made a very significant difference to their creativity. Now, the one last thought on innovation, which is picking up a bit on what both our first speakers were saying, is that if you want to take an idea and put it into practice, how many of you tried to do that? Take an idea and put it into practice. Was it hard? Was it almost impossible? You've got to be driven. You've got to be a bit crazy. To be an innovator, you've got to be a bit crazy. You've got to have a great idea, but you've also got to be driven. And what drives people? Meaning and purpose. Just as Steve said, purpose. Meaning and purpose. What are the different types of meaning? Maslow's hierarchy. Security and safety is the first one. Why do so many innovations come out of defense? It's one of the fundamental drivers of human meaning. But there are higher order meanings as well, right? Wanting to make a difference and help others. Life and death. In my case, exactly. Life and death was the driver. So I just want to leave you with this thought. If you want to become more innovative, two ideas to leave you with. The biggest ideas I've learned in my 20 years. The first one, this unexploited alpha theta tool of learning how to be creative whenever you want it. Bang. Second one, tap into your meaning. And if you're an organizational leader, you, as Steve said, you need to create the environment where people can have that space to be reflective. If they're anxious, they won't have that space, right? They've got to have that space to be reflective. And secondly, they've got to have a sense of purpose and meaning. Because if you don't have a really deep, driving sense of purpose and meaning, like when he was creating 9MSN, you won't get people doing the crazy thing to go against the organization, to go against the society, to create innovations. Because innovations are truly novel, they're truly new, and they threaten everything in some way, in some small way. They threaten others' egos, da-da-da. So the two big things I've learned is if you want to have a creative and innovative organization, it's about helping people go into these reflective spaces, which is taking the anxiety out and learning these techniques. And it's secondly, and very importantly, connecting with people's meaning and purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Three fantastic speakers, four, of course, involving Catherine, but very beautifully segued too, all of them linking and with a lot of take-homes for us. Thank you for that. I'm going to stop the process just for a moment to introduce another Innovation Scholarship winner to give you the chance to perhaps write down your 140 characters of your